And welcome to episode 92. Kind of skipped a week because, well, last week was hectic for Shaggy and myself. I simply, for whatever reason, got tired and fell asleep. So I slept my weekend away last week. Oh, thug life. I know. I know. But this week, we both decided let's continue the theme of, mobile versus stationary gaming. And wow,
Do you have a
echo
tab
moment.
pop up with some sound or something?
What had happened was I clicked the thing foolishly. It opened up the live stream for the Hangout session. They've been changing some options as of late, which once I figure it out, it's better. But I prefer to figure it out before we broadcast. But that's all right because apparently, if I want to start Hangouts on air, I can do so from the official page by going clicking the little thing and going to Hangouts and then start Hangout on air, and boom, it's unbeknownst to me, I forgot to close the little thing there, but so it started broadcasting at the same time I started recording. So
Uh,
1 second delay, and I'm like, oh no. When I saw the little playing in the background, it's like, no, I apologize for that. Um, yeah, yeah. But anyway, we decided to keep the theme going for mobile versus stationary because there are differences. Stationary can be you're sitting at a desktop. Actually, you can even have a portable computer like a notebook or a laptop, game console that hooks into a TV versus say your mobile phone, your tablet, something that you take with you. Um, but you chose an interesting game, and I chose a port, an Android port of a popular game.
mhm.
Um, and I figured let's start with your game first.
Okay. So for this episode, I decided to pick a game, Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning, and I have a lot of reasons why I picked this game, and primarily because it's a role-playing game, and I stuck with that theme like I did with the last episode where I picked BioShock. However, in this case, there's no first-person aspect; it's third person, and it's not top-down isometric; it's third person. Um, a third person role playing game. They consider it a role playing or action role playing game, according to like either the Wikipedia page or if you go to their actual wiki page for the Kingdoms of Amalur. Um, and the when I first came across this game, I was still in school in Sedalia, and I thought it was just absolutely amazing. The graphics were really nice. It's not intense on a system either. So if you have a lower power computer, anything with at least a dedicated graphics card, I mean, even nowadays, a lot of common PCs have strong enough integrated graphics that you could run this game on lower settings and it'll be completely playable based on the way the engine works and just everything behind it, and it still looks very good. The environment and everything is very nice. Now the character definition and profiles for that aren't quite as good as they could be for the level of graphics that the game really has, but really you're not immersing yourself into that character so much. You're immersing yourself into the world, and then the gameplay itself is what brings you alive, brings you to a connection with that character. Um, Another reason why I picked this was because of the customization and the practically limitless options that you have with your character. You have four different playable races to start out with, which are two different types of humans and then two different types of elves. They are called Almain and Varani for the humans, and the Dakelfar, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the second one for the elves, so I'll just leave it at that. But and each one grants different bonuses to like skills, and these skills allow you to do certain things in the game, like stealth. So like if you want to sneak up on someone and kill them that way, do some sneak attacks, you always get that critical bonus damage like you do with most other games. Um, there's also like different other aspects. You can play like a roguelike character, which will take that stealth into play, and then you can combine that with some other abilities. There are specific abilities in the game as well, which have 3 different tiers, which focus on might, sorcery, and then finesse. And the finesse is primarily for like your roguelike characters. Your sorcery is for like your mage-like characters, and then your might is for like your warrior-based characters. Now you can mix and match anything from those trees as much as you want. Granted, there's some restrictions on the higher level things, but you can create someone that's completely balanced. So like this kind of like battle mage rogue kind of thing, whatever you want to call it. And then based on how many points you put into each of these tiers of these abilities, you unlock things that are called twists of fate. And that ties into the story a little bit, because your character that you play, regardless of what gender or whatever, the character is basically what they call the fateless one. Because at the beginning of the game, it drops you in, it brings you into this cutscene. And this cutscene is basically dragging a dead, or what you think is a dead body, or they're dragging it. A couple of gnomes are dragging a dead body, which is another race in the game. Basically, it's similar to a dwarf or a halfling from like the Lord of the Rings universe, and they're dragging this dead body in a cart, talking about this what's going on at the beginning of the story, and you get thrown into this pile of dead bodies. Then you come back to life because you're basically dead. You come back to life and you have nothing but raggedy clothes on. You're in this pile of stinking, rotting, dead bodies, and there's nothing. You don't know what's going on. There's a chest over in the corner, and then it puts you right into that spot. You immediately, you have a quest, and you have a map, and you have a map marker, but you don't know what's going on. So it's really interesting, and you can kind of sense from the gameplay that it was originally designed to be an MMO game. So the gameplay is very enjoyable. It's very engaging, but the story is a little bit simpler, and that's due to the fact that it was designed as an MMO game, not necessarily as a single player game. So there's all kinds of other different aspects that lead to different ways that you can play your character. There's also another game mechanic called it's something to do with fate. I forgot exactly.
Like, one of the things I read up on the twist of fate is, everything goes into super slow motion, and you can just kill a bunch of enemies all at once.
That's basically what I was talking about. I forgot what exactly it's called, but you're basically twisting. What they consider fate is basically like the fate in the literal sense, as in your destiny is chosen, but your character isn't limited by whatever your destiny is. It's completely open and free reign, so you can do whatever you want, and that ties heavily into the story on how the entire story plays out. And you have some choices. It's not super complex and really large with the amount of choices that you have, but you have some sense of freedom, especially with the customization of the character. But that twist of fate, when you perform that action, you get bonus damage, slows time down, and you get bonus damage resistance too. And then if you kill so many enemies, they all kind of like hunker down, and then you have the ability to perform like a special kill. And it's always at random, regardless of how you set up your ability trees. You can use like this giant lance that's like the size of a troll, or a hammer that's like the size of a building. I mean, it's crazy, but it picks it at random, and then you get bonus experience after you perform that action from all of the enemies that you've killed, and you can perform it on whatever enemy you want.
So that's because like the everybody has a fate, or as in they have an predetermined ending to their life, and your character, because of their nature, they can alter somebody else's fate by interacting with them.
Yeah, and that's what the story really plays heavily on. You kind of find out about it a little bit at the beginning because you basically defy death. Your character is a human, or well, you have the choice of being a human, but you also can be an elf. But there's certain types of characters in the game that are or races rather that are basically immortal, and they consider one of the playable races, any one of them you choose, they can call you child of dust because you're immortal. But in this context, you've pissed off a lot of people because you defied death. So it twists the story another way. And the DLC, I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, but the DLC is pretty interesting and throws you into some little different variations of the same game world. So that's going to be interesting once I get to that part.
Because I just like the idea that basically you're in a sense restoring free will to everybody, so that not everything is predetermined for all of them. Mm-hmm. Like one one NPC was supposed to die at the hands of a monster because you were brought back to life. Your character, they were saved from that fate, for example.
In that case, that's really close to the beginning of the story. There are types of kind of like a job or a profession. They're considered fate weavers. They have the ability to tell what another person's fate is by just kind of looking at them or touching them. And in this case, he knew his own fate, and he had been preparing himself his entire life. And then when your character intervenes and basically prevents that what he thought was going to happen, completely screws with his mind, screws him up, and then he doesn't know what to do. And that character is particularly heavy drunk, so he just drinks more. It's a little amusing.
But I read the spoilers for the story. I'm not going to reveal them here, but it does have plenty of twists and turns from the looks of it. And I saw in links that I looked it up on. It's available on Steam as well. So
that's what I have it on right now. That's the platform I have it on. But it's also available for the PS3 and the 360, which are both now older generation consoles. But the game came out 3 years ago, roughly, almost 4.
Since EA owns it, is it also available for their platform Origin as well?
I think so. I'm not sure. I haven't messed with my Origin account forever, so I'd have to look, but I'd imagine so.
But yeah, I may hunker down and give it a try at some point. I haven't decided yet. I imagine both my systems would be enough to play them.
As long as you have dedicated graphics, and well, you have to run it on Windows. You can't run it on Linux without going through a bunch of hoops and then using Wine. It really will detriment your performance when it comes to that. But
okay, so it's not Steam Play ready then.
No.
Okay.
It's only built for. Oh, poop! Really? It's only built for Windows at the moment. It might be built for Mac, but I know it's not for Linux.
Because I looked. So, let's see. I looked it up. Where are you? No, not here. Not here. Kingdoms of Steam powered. And of course, I'm going to have to enter my date of birth just to even be able to view this. This is annoying.
It does have some slightly graphic content, even if it is it's a tad bit on the cartoony side, but it's still a little bit serious. So I mean, it's just the artwork in that sense, I guess.
Oh, they've got 3 DLCs: Legend of Dead Kill, Teeth of Naros. They also have a weapons and armor bundle. So yeah, they don't. Um, at least a gig of RAM, which I more than have that. Um, I don't have a GeForce 8800, but the card does have 512 megs of RAM. Um,
As long as you have something similar or better than that, it's going to perform just fine. And I had something with a gig of video RAM, and it wasn't the best graphics card. It was, I think, 180 or 170 or $180 when I bought it. So it's fairly cheap for a high-end video card, and it ran it flawlessly. It ran it smoothly at 1080p too.
so like, and I'm looking at some minor screenshots, and I can, yeah, I can see some of the artwork here, and it looks pretty nifty. Definitely worth a try. I hope they make it Steam ready one day. That would be nice. But looks like it's only available on Windows at the moment. Not even OS 10 can run this thing.
I'm not surprised. It is EA. Well, and it was their development studio didn't build it for Mac platform. It was strictly for consoles, and then it was ported to Windows.
Right. And I'm sure one day they'll change their minds and expand support, or Steam will just have a compatibility layer of their own that's unique. But the interesting story behind it is 38 Studios was subsidized by the state of Rhode Island. They're loaned $75 million for the sole purpose of bringing 38 Studios to Rhode Island to try to combat unemployment and what have you. They get this thing out there and they go bankrupt. And it was a hit, but it wasn't enough of a hit to satisfy then Governor Lincoln Chafee, because according to Chafee, they needed to sell about 3 million copies just to break even. But EA eventually bought that studio out after the state had taken control of all their assets and everything else. So that, and you said that before we started that they're kind of sort of back in business now.
Yeah, it's under EA's label now, but they're working on. They've done some iOS games and Android games since then. It's very similar to Clash of Clans. I forgot what the name of it is. But the big, huge games is back in business, and I think they might be planning on making a sequel. And it would be awesome if they did, because I personally love this game. But they've got jobs available and stuff like that. So Dominations, that was the game. It's free to play on the App Store for Apple and Google Play for Android.
Now, since you're talking about the computer for the platform, you're using a mouse and keyboard for controlling your character.
Mm-hmm.
Moving the character around with the mouse, how does that work?
In terms of this game, it's a little bit clunky. It can be, depending on the settings of your mouse, and a lot of gaming mice tend to have pretty high DPI settings, which, if you don't know what DPI is, it's basically dots per inch. It's similar to how a printer prints. It prints ink in dots, and how many dots per inch it can print per inch it can print is how fast it can perform. And the same for a mouse. It's just laser mice in particular are measured in dots per inch. A mechanical mouse is a little bit different, but nobody uses mechanical mice anymore. But it depends on the setting, and this camera just follows. It's pretty sensitive, and that's really all it is. But the keyboard controls are fairly somewhat intuitive. They can be a little bit complex when it comes to certain things, but it's pretty straightforward, like most computer games.
Like, are you able to use a gamepad with it, or not so much?
I would imagine so. I'd bet that you could probably even hook up a 360 controller and it would work just fine. If it was built by EA and it was built for or published by EA, they usually put a lot of the emphasis on stuff like that, and it was built for a console originally. So
Okay. But yeah, that. And for those of you who are wondering, it's $20 on it. Just the game alone is $20 on Steam. The whole collection, including all the downloadable content, is like $40. And of course, it requires an agreement to third-party end-user license agreement, which is EA. It's EA for you. But
it's one thing you got to expect when playing a game from EA.
Yeah, but it looks fairly entertaining, and if somebody's wanting a different game to try, that might be one to give a shot to. The game I chose, which I first of all, the challenge is I own this little tablet right here, this RCA tablet, which many moons ago talked about how kind of problematic parts of the touchscreen on this thing are. I will eventually have to get it replaced with something else because I looked at their warranty process, and apparently it's a pain in the ass, and I'm not going to deal with it. I'm sorry, you shouldn't have to pay a company to replace a dud. That's stupid. It's beyond the 15 days anyway for where I bought it from, and going through RCA themselves. No, not for a minor annoyance like that. If I avoid those certain edges of the screen, I'm fine. And the game I chose was Final Fantasy III. They chose a third-party company, I think Matrix, to help port it, Square Enix. And instead of 2D graphics, it's 3D graphics. And it's very appropriately programmed as an RPG for the tablet. Like, if I were to move a character, this way on this tablet, for those of you who are watching the video, there's a little compass-like thing that pops up on the screen. The character moves, and it's the usual save the world by collecting all these crystals, by beating all these monsters, bringing light back to the world, blah blah blah. That it was common theme for the first few of the games in that series. But in this case, there's job classes that can be chosen. They all start out as freelancers, meaning they can equip just about anything. They can learn many minor spells and things like that. But the downside is there's no major boost to their stats. And of course, attacking monsters, you can either tap the monster and tap it again to attack it, choose to attack it with each character, or you can navigate the menu system. Game saves, you can actually save your game to the cloud, so to speak. So if you get another device and you install it on that new device, well, you can you can pick up right where you left off. So, but that's pretty straightforward. You can pinch and zoom in and see little sparklies to either trigger hidden switches, to access different areas, find hidden items. A lot of straightforwardness to the gameplay, but if you don't want to get lost, there's walkthroughs online that can also be applied, because it's basically that game. It's basically same games that you've played, but with a major facelift and added features. So I was thinking about eventually obtaining the port of Final Fantasy V, because they added a couple of extra job classes to that just for Android users. Necromancer being one of them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As soon as they come out with Final Fantasy VII, I will be happy and I will get it for that. Of course, iOS users are very, very privileged to be able to run that on their devices, which makes me want to punch Apple executives in the face, so to speak, for being there first.
I don't know why it is that Apple seems to always be on top of it when it comes to things like that. I think part of it may be because they offer support for porting to their platform, maybe a little more support than Google does. However, from my experience, I also have not made an iOS app, but I've used Google's APIs pretty heavily, and they're very easy to understand. So I don't see why. I don't know. I'm looking at it from a different perspective, and then that may be my problem.
Well, and there's, like I said, there's various nuances you have to deal with, whether it's a computer, whether it's a console, or mobile. You're dealing with people like either Apple who either gets mad that you announce that you made a new release, but you announce it for Android or other competing platforms before you announce it for Apple. That will irritate that company. So this is the same company that, albeit it was inevitable, had a huge announcement for a digital pencil, and Matt Hartley, who writes about free and open source software, likened it to announcing an OtterBox. He wasn't impressed.
It's not the first time that a company has come out with a stylus/pencil for a device, and well, it's bad enough that Sony, with a lot of their devices, with their Xperia platform, which I still have my Sony. You can write on the interface. The interface is designed in such a way and sensitive enough that it can detect whether or not a pencil is actually touching the screen, and you can draw with a physical, literal pencil. Boom, Apple. Boom. Beat that.
Well, it's sort of like Apple announcing that, with our new phone, you can call through Wi-Fi networks when, okay, T-Mobile's not the greatest carrier in the United States, but they've had that feature since 2006.
They've had it for years. Yeah, they've had it for years.
They've done that for many, many years. So, but the port does run fairly well of Final Fantasy III does run fairly well on this tablet, and this tablet's only got like 1 gigabyte of RAM in it, and only and it doesn't have the fastest processor, but it has good enough graphics and everything else. It runs fine, and honestly, it actually is better suited to run on that side of a 10.1-inch tablet than probably on a phone, although you probably could run it on a phone if you wanted to. I actually like seeing what I'm doing a little bit more, but whereas a game like WWE Immortals, a more compact screen might create more responsive gameplay on your part, but with an RPG, a bigger screen might actually come in handy. But pretty much it can get a little bit wonky with moving the character around. You may find yourself backtracking and trying again until you move the character to the exact right spot that you need him at. Sometimes if you want to talk to an NPC, you have to tap when the exclamation point appears, and sometimes they may move out of the way, and you're like, hold still, damn it. Hold still, and all of that. But all in all, it's looks fairly straightforward. So, um, I'd say it's worth what I had paid for it at the time, which I don't remember what I paid for it at the time. It's but it's I think it was $16. I can't remember off the top of my head. I may try Shadowrun next on it, although I do know Shadowrun takes up a lot of space.
Oh, really?
And they recommend against running any other apps at the time because it's a memory hog apparently. But then again, it's basically an entire it's a PC game ported down to a mobile platform. It's still going to be huge download in and of itself. But all in all, I think it's worth purchasing. Though I'll probably save up and probably give Final Fantasy V a shot, or wait until I get a slightly better device before I load it up with games, because this thing does okay. It's just I got somewhat of a dud, and it gets annoying after a while. So I'm like, but it functions okay. What games are you thinking about trying next? Are you thinking about trying mobile games, or do you think mobile gaming's kind of a curse on the blight on the landscape of gaming?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a blight on the landscape of gaming, but I'm not a fan of mobile games, and that's for sure. I'm Once I switch to a PC for playing games, I'm a PC gamer, and I will always be a PC gamer just because I have more freedom at like customizing the level of graphics that I can get. Like with consoles, you're set. You're screwed. They're set at a certain level, and sometimes you even have frame caps. So then the performance of the system, even if it can perform better, it's locked to a specific level. So that way, for power reasons or for design reasons or for whatever the reasons are, you can't go past that. And on PC games, you never see that. I've only seen that with one game in my entire library of 160 games, and that was because it was a console port. So
Right. I will say consoles like the original Xbox, you could actually mod to add more RAM to it, which actually solved. There was which one? Skyrim was part of that series. Elder Scrolls, one of the Elder Scrolls games. If you had too many spells, you would crash the game. It was a memory issue, and people were able to solve it by, modding the console to have more RAM on it. Also ran into another friend of mine ran into another issue with some other game. It was one of those where you run onto a battlefield hack and slashing opponents, and under a scenario, you get past it, the screen turns black and doesn't move beyond that. The game just freezes from there. And I'm like, oh, looks like we found a bug in that game. Either it was hardware and or software. I have no idea, but yeah, consoles are a little bit harder to patch than a full blown desktop. Although there have been attempts to put out consoles that you can upgrade or customize a little bit more, but they're basically glorified HT PCs. Such as the Alienware's offerings for their little console, quote unquote console, which is Steam with big picture mode on it, that we talked about a few episodes back. So I don't know. I don't. Do you think that console gaming is going to kind of fade away for a while, or is it just going to stagnate and just still be there? Or
it's hard to say.
Because because I see more about PC gaming nowadays than I do consoles. There was news about PlayStation 4 and they'd get a certain remake first and then Xbox One, but now I haven't seen much major news, not even from Nintendo, but it's and now Konami's getting out of console gaming and altogether and going towards the mobile platform, which has one of our that's one of the reasons why one of our co-hosts sees mobile gaming as a cancer.
Let me guess. It's Curtis, isn't it?
Yeah. Which I can understand the frustration, because there have been a lot of fans of Metal Gear series of games. And I can understand that frustration. On the other hand, there's only so many Metal Gears that you can make. And the one where it talks about the war economy, to me, that should have been the last game for Metal Gear, period. Snake with the gray beard and everything else, and after it ending, that should have been it in my mind. That should have, there's only so many times you can add to that storyline, rehash storylines and things like that. It's before it's time to create something new anyway, because they're the company that backs Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game. They're into other things. I think they're trying to stay ahead of the curve, which is kind of why we've been doing this mobile versus stationary type of gaming, showing the pros and cons, and sometimes one of the cons for mobile includes if the cloud goes down or if your internet connection just shuts off, you're kind of screwed. At least with Steam, the game is physically downloaded to a section of your hard drive, and you can just play without the online features, depending on what it is.
Yeah, it does depend on the game in that case, because there are some games that, like in the case of certain games by Ubisoft, they will not allow you to play the game without authentication from their servers. There's also certain games by EA that require you to log in. And that's becoming more and more popular nowadays, just because it's harder and harder to regulate what's going on. It's to keep people from trying to crack the games and trying to download them illegally and play them for theoretically free. So it's unfortunate.
It is, and the only way that free and open source alternatives can pop up is if enough people are passionate and interested enough and motivated enough to do it. And that's not always the case. But, even with affordable monthly offerings of, this and that as a service, there are still people who are like, I don't want to pay any money. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's frustrating too, because I kept trying to point out to a buddy of mine, hey, they've made it to where it's a little bit more affordable. You're not paying like hundreds of dollars at a time, or nearly $100 just to play an epic game, or half of that, and they still weren't going for it. They'd rather pirate it, and crack it and things like that. But and it's sad, but at some point I even see the standalone games kind of starting to go away to a point. It's going to be more of a content based platform like Steam, Origin, Google Play, the iOS App Store, those places, even the Windows Store. It's moving more and more towards those.
Yeah.
So I think that just about wraps it up for this episode. I'm kind of talked out about all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little worn out myself.
But I think next episode, get more on the perspective of why emphasizing mobile platform is not necessarily best for gaming either, because it's good to hear all sides of that. If I can get a hold of Curtis and say, hey, let's see what we can do on that front, because certain things are kind of, I can see the frustration, and I think there's something that's going to happen in the gaming industry that's going to either force it to adapt and change, or it's just going to nearly evaporate, and it'll be the 1980s all over again, waiting for the right company to just come along and go, family entertainment. Because that's what happened in the 80s with Nintendo. Saturation kind of just nearly destroyed the market. But we will see you all next week, and I'll make sure not to have a stream playing on at the same time. That was embarrassing. But
it happens.
And we will talk to you next time.
See you guys later.